Welcome to Political Night. I am your host, Chris Learson, and I am honoured to welcome back, well, not technically not welcome back, but welcome to the show, Adam Kokesh. He's been on my previous podcast before. He is host of Adam versus the Man. He was Iraq Veterans Against the War, as you can see on his nice little jumper right there. And he's running as Libertarian candidate for President of the United States, or non-president, if I remember correctly. How are you doing today, Adam?
Outstanding. Thank you so much, Chris, for having me on for your new production. Really appreciate the opportunity. It's funny you call this a jumper. This is a hoodie in the United States. And in the United States, hoodie is like, it's kind of a badass word. You know, it's like, yeah, he's got a hoodie on, you know, and then the word is, you call this a jumper in Australia. For us, there's no American English term for jumper that has any kind of badass anything. Like a jumper is something for like a little kid or for some kind of women's clothing. I'm not big on fashion terminology here. I'm sure jumper is used in a variety of ways in the United States fashion industry, but this is a hoodie, man. It's got like that word has meaning. But since you introduced me as a presidential candidate, yes, I do have to explain that I am like, please, no, let me explain myself. It's not like that. I'm not a psychopath trying to put on the ring of power, as you know, Chris. I am technically running for president, but it is more accurate to say that I'm running to turn the federal election in the United States into a referendum on whether or not the central government should be allowed to exist at all. Not a debate about what kind of government we should or should not have, but just how centralized should it be? Do we need Washington, D.C. making laws for the entire country? Or even if you like the system that we have, wouldn't it be more effective, more efficient, more transparent, less corrupt at the local level? And just taking this one step of going to state governments being sovereign, my platform is to take the federal government through a bankruptcy process that leaves us with 50 independent states and up to 562 sovereign native nations. So I get to resign on day one, and we start this peaceful, orderly, responsible process. So we're on the campaign trail now, as you know, here on the bus. I'm going to give your audience a quick view of our rig going up to the front there. You can see, and then we got the whole back set up there. Yeah, man, we are in the middle of convention season now. Had California last weekend. We are driving as we speak. Right now, we are somewhere in Texas. I almost don't want to say in case there's any law enforcement listening in. But we are. I actually don't know. My driver, I was just like, hey, man, Chris wants to start the interview a little early. You ready? It's next. And they're like, yeah, there's a taco shop over there. We're going to go get tacos while you do your interview. So my crew's all inside right now getting food. And I'm here talking to you on the bus. And we are on our way to Florida this weekend. Very excited about this. Very excited about the primary, the way it's shaping up, looking very good for us. The delegate race, everything else. It's not going to be easy. You know, we were hoping that, hey, Adam announces and everybody gets that he's doing something fundamentally different and says, yes, let's try something new for the LP. And we've brought a lot of our people in who are like, yeah, we better be trying something new this year. It's just a matter of getting our message in front of the rest of the Libertarian Party leadership, making sure that we get our people at the state conventions and showing them that this message has legs, that this has, appeal beyond the party, that localization can really unite all Americans, regardless of political orientation, and ultimately all of humanity. This being an international show, I should point out that this idea of localization, of getting government all the way down to the community level, is a global trend. Speaking of which, have you heard anything about Brexit lately?
All I really know about what's going on with Brexit is it's tied up in the Parliament. You know what I mean? You've got the two sides arguing when the date's going to be set, when this is going to happen, when that's going to happen. It's one of those things where, well, actually, it was funny because last farm I was working with a British fella, and I asked him what his thoughts were. And I guess, he's a younger guy and all that sort of stuff, and pretty much his answer was, it's all those old kooks. who didn't think, and he had a completely anti-Brexit sort of mindset.
Mm.
And when I explained to him, like, well, as far as I know, the UN makes 16%. I think it was like most of the laws that were under Britain. There was a certain taxation that was going on. The laws that were being implemented to Britain at the time were done by the EU, and not by the British Parliament the way it should have been set out. And he just turns around to me. He's like, "Knight, you don't know what the fuck you're talking about," and walks away. And I was just like, I thought I did. Like, you know what I mean? He's just like,
be wary of anybody trying to advocate for any political position who can't, in a cool, calm, collected way, stand behind it and explain it. That's your dead giveaway.
Yeah.
That's an emotionally driven position. That can't be right. There's got to be something wrong with this guy's process. You come to the conclusion that we need big central government. Show your work.
Yeah.
Oh, you can't, can you? Yeah, no, you can't.
Well,
but no,
every time I get into sorry, but every time I get into an argument like that and somebody leaves, my main thing is like, "Ha, I won," and they always stop and wait. What you mean? What do you mean you won? Well, you obviously can't give me a good explanation on why you feel the way you do, and you just literally just got angry at me and you walked away, so I win. You know what I mean? And
well, I would say you definitely come out ahead.
Yeah.
In that confrontation of ideals, but
I think
really
it's
winning,
just pushing the buttons for them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If I simply say I win, you know what I mean? I sort of drag them back into the conversation.
Yeah, you get to re-engage them. Yes, of course. No, I get, but even better is if you can, if you can talk to people who are adults, who are open-minded, and I feel really silly saying that word adults, because there's some children who have greater intellectual maturity and open-mindedness and receptiveness to new ideas than a lot of these childish Democrats and Republicans in Congress here in the U.S.
Yeah.
But the point up here is that they're most of the way through the process with Brexit, aren't they?
I'm pretty sure they are. I know that the guy leading it, I forget his name off the top of my head.
Boris Johnson.
Yeah. But there was another guy who was one of the main guys. Nigel Farage. I know that he said that it should be done either this year or next year. But again, it's one of those things that the Parliament says, "Oh, we need to revote." You know what I mean? So they're trying to push the,
power doesn't let go of its power very easily.
Exactly. So they're trying to say, "Oh, we need another revote," and and. But the main thing is slander. That's what I've been hearing mostly from the whole Brexit thing. Just like I said, the guy at the last farm that I worked at, he was just simply saying, "No, these just are old kooks who voted for it who don't really understand it." And I tried to get him to explain it to me, and he did his best, I guess. You know what I mean, for the limited knowledge that he knew. But when I explained it, I was like, "Well, this is what I think." He's like, "Yes, but we can't go over to France now without a passport." I was like, "Yeah, fucking welcome to Australia, man." Like, you know what I mean? I can't go overseas without a passport. You know, like.
Then get rid of the passport system. Get rid of your complaint. You're saying, like, this is the ultimate false premise of centralization of government, that because a small local government might do something bad, we need a big centralized government to protect us from that smaller government. Well, then what's to stop the bigger government from doing something bad that's going to be way worse and way harder to rein in and way harder to control?
Yeah.
And so, like, this issue of immigration, I'm not an open borders or closed borders guy. I reject the concept of this framing, this left-right paradigm that says it has to be one or the other. The answer is the only legitimate borders are private property borders. If you want to control freedom of movement, if you want to have a neighborhood or a community or a private wall around whatever that you own or your community owns, that's the only way you're going to have real border security anyway, is with a limited local private property. Like, any government trying to do it on a big scale is going to fail miserably. And the answer in that sense is that you have to say government borders are illegitimate in the first place.
Well, technically, I can't say much living in Australia because we have the best moat in the world. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, right.
I was talking to a mate about that, and I made that joke. Like, it's like, well, what do you think about a wall? I was like, where are we going to put the wall? Like, you know what I mean? We literally
Yeah,
live, on a freaking island, bro. Like, we've got the
yeah,
best moat in the world.
yeah.
Nothing's going to happen. And he's like, okay, yeah, true, true. But
And then you have that little attack park next door.
yeah, yeah, exactly. But like we've got 9 different estates going up in and around the town that I live in, and they've all got huge walls. You know what I mean? Like they've got
Yeah,
private security, going around the thing, and yeah, they're beautiful houses and all that sort of thing. And it's just like, oh, leave out the riffraffs, I guess. You know what I mean? That's I guess their mentality. But this goes back to what you were saying before. If you want a wall, yeah, sure, private property, thing like that, where you have a small. I think it's about, if I remember correctly, about 30 houses that live in each estate. So, yeah, and they've all got their little private walls. They've got security that come around during the night time, make sure everything's tidied up. You got a code to get in and out, so type of thing. So, yeah, I agree. But when it comes to immigration, I really don't mind because my great
because you're
grandfather.
a white dude living in Australia.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. He was German. He left Germany when it was just being formed as Germany, because prior to that, it was a bunch of smaller countries, that all got sort of put
Right.
together. That's if my
Little
history is correct.
kingdoms. Yeah.
Yeah, that's if my history is correct. I'm pretty sure it is, but I might be a little wrong. He's just like, no, fuck this. I'm trying to do a German accent. I can't. But he jumped on a boat and he was actually headed over to the States. But for some reason, the route they took was coming past Australia. Now, they didn't stop in Australia, and here's the story I was told. It might have been a bit of a romanticized over the years type of thing, but he saw the coast of Australia and it's like, that's nice. And when nobody was looking, he jumped off the boat and literally swam to shore, you know? It might have been romanticized over the years, like, because I told my dad that, I
Yeah.
said, this is what Uncle Bluey was telling me all those years ago. He's like, I think he just got off the boat. I think they actually docked and he just got off and sort of snuck away. And I was like, but I like the idea that he was sort of like, fuck this, and did the whole Forrest Gump, like, hi, Australia, and jumped in the water and sort of swam ashore. That's the sort of image that I have in my head. So it's just like, I'm going to keep that legend going, for my children
Nice.
and my nieces,
Nice.
etc. But so I can't really say much about illegal immigration or immigration at all, considering that my grandfather or great whatever long grandfather, I think it was like 1890 that he came to Australia, maybe a little bit earlier, maybe later, something like that. I can't really say shit, like, you know what I mean? Like, he's technically an illegal immigrant that came to Australia. However, he started his homestead, like, out about 2 hours from here. There's actually a street called Learson, because his son, along with my no, his grandson, along with my grandfather, set up a property, a bit of a farm. They cleared the land, they set up everything, and prior to that, he actually moved into Ned Kelly country, which was my dad's gonna kill me if he watches this and realizes I fucking forgot. Yeah, but
Well, what you said about homesteading is
mm,
so critical.
yeah, exactly.
That like if you're an Aborigine living in Australia at the time the white people show up,
Mm-hmm.
you have to respect that as a human being on this planet, you have a right to equitable access to natural resources.
Yeah,
The Aborigine who were in Australia before the Europeans got there weren't using everything.
exactly.
Now, the general trend, of course, was for the European imperialism to stomp all over the rights and property of native populations all over the world.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm obviously not trying to reverse that,
No.
but that you have a right as a human being to say, hey, no one's using this land. I'm going to show up. I'm going to put a fence around it, or I'm going to put up a wall. I'm going to build a home. I'm going to homestead. I'm going to actually put unused natural resources to use.
Yep.
And embracing that as a fundamental concept behind what private property should be. I mean, here in the United States, in a way, our birthright, our inheritance has been stolen from us, not just by the system of taxation and inheritance laws and how family businesses get bought up and bought out and so on, but 50+% of the land in the western states in the United States is owned by the federal government.
Mhm.
That means it's been sequestered from use. It means that the people here around it can't put it to good use, can't homestead it, can't claim ownership over it. And it's one of the most exciting things about my platform, and really of the concept of localization. When you take governments apart from the top down, you get to take back what's been stolen from you as a people, as part of this process.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. So we've been developing that policy, and it's funny in a sense. One of the hard lessons I've had to learn with this campaign, because I'm a policy nerd. Like, I have gone through the organization chart of the federal government, agency by agency, sub-agency by sub-agency, and gone, okay, we're going to do this with this. It's not. I have all the policy answers you could possibly want. And as I went through developing this platform, looking at dissolving the federal government, there were a few unknowns that I knew I'd have to flesh out, a few challenges I'd have to figure out. But every answer is like, oh my gosh, even that gets better. Oh my gosh, yes, we get to address that problem. Oh yes, what do we do with native tribes? Give them sovereignty. Oh, you know how we've screwed them over by violating so many treaties over the years through the federal government? Yes, we get to at least try to give them some of their land back to undo the way those treaties have been violated, as best we can untangle them. Like, when we get to give the people directly, individually, by social security number, your claim to your share of everything that's been stolen back to you. The bullshit debt that the federal government claims to owe, so that when you're an American, you're born in this country, you have some, several $100,000 of your share of the federal debt, national debt. That's nonsense. That's intergenerational child abuse. You get to write that off. Everything about localization, you go, oh my gosh, wow, yes, that gets better too. Wow, yes, that gets better too. And one of the things that we've been developing is the mechanism of paying people back with a digital security token, AmeriCoin. The thing is, most people don't care. Life is pretty good on Earth today. Most people just go, you know what? Let's just stop the injustice of government. I've got enough stuff. I've got a comfortable place to live. I've got a reasonable job, or access to food, and clothing, shelter, energy, internet. People feel can we end the injustice? Can we make government more effective and more efficient? Not effective as a racket, as a ripoff, but you know what I mean. For the things that people want to use it for, that are genuine to serve their communities. Let's get government down to the community level, because the community is something that you choose to be a part of. You can choose to leave at any time. It is a voluntary group, not something that you're forced into. Everybody wants that. Live and let live. It's just developing this policy, this message over the last 2 years on the trail. It's been a joy. It's been an absolute pleasure.
I remember making the case on the last podcast by the localization method, and it was just me spitballing. Maybe I saw some of your videos and I sort of ingrained into me, type of thing, because I can't really exactly remember what we were talking about. But I just remember making the bottom up instead of the top down method of running things. And I remember at the time I was doing the podcast with me mate, and I got into a nice spiel, and I'm like, yeah, this is a very convincing argument. And he sort of destroyed me by simply saying, yes, but we're not politicians. We don't know what we're talking about. I was like, hey, no, don't do that. Don't just end my fucking...
The politicians don't know what they're talking about either. Except when it comes to being more effective at using government to rip you off.
Exactly.
That's what they're there for.
Recently in Australia, the ACT, which is the Australian Capital Territory, which is technically Canberra, which is Washington for you guys, but it's its own state. It's just around the one town, but it's its own state. If that makes sense. They just decriminalized marijuana.
Nice.
For the pollies. It's like, yeah, okay, the politicians.
Oh, right, but the rest of the country, it's still illegal.
Yeah, exactly. And it's just like, you dirty motherfuckers. You know what I mean? So now you can go have a fucking cone and have a beer. Well, sending the
like you can consume in public there, like it's that open.
I think in certain places you can do it in your own home. But I just read an article where the law's being passed by Canberra and getting enforced in New South Wales, which is just the bordering state for mine. they're doing knock raids. Not really knock raids, but door to door to check if people are smoking weed in their home. Okay, so Canberra, where it's completely legal to smoke weed and to even grow it in in certain places, are enforcing laws starting with New South Wales in order to bust people in their home for doing the exact same fucking thing. You know what I mean? Like, I have family that are in the police force, ranging from uncles and cousins, whatever, whatever. And like, they'll catch, like, say, a 16-year-old smoking weed, and they'll just let it go. Like,
Right.
one of my cousins was telling me a story how his captain was driving along, and he could see a car parked out in the middle, this little place down near the park, just down the road here. And he could see, the lights were on, and it was just smoky inside. They were just sort of, what's that? Hot
Hot
box.
box.
That's it, hot boxing it. And the cop's like, "What do I do here?" So he sort of turned off his lights, pulled right behind the car, and I'm sitting there thinking, "Oh, here we go. I'm going to hear a story of how he fucking arrested this poor cunt." And apparently all he did was walk over, knocked on the window, and the guy's like, slowly wound down the
Right.
window, fucking smoke pours out, and he's like, "Yes, officer." And he's like, "Oh, I'm looking for a guy, blonde hair, fucking did it," and made a description. "Have you seen him around here?" And the guy's just like that. He's like, "Okay, not a problem, carry on." Turns around, gets in his car, and
Nah.
fucks off. And like, I asked him, "What'd you do that for?" He's like, "Come on, man, you could have done it at home and not get caught. I just thought I'd do that
Yeah.
to him, just to say, hey,
Yeah.
go home." You know what I mean?
Yeah. Like, hey, are you safe to drive?
Yeah, exactly.
No, I know you're way safer to drive with cannabis than alcohol and
Yeah,
most other drugs, but still, like,
yeah, because you're too paranoid, you're gonna fucking run off
you're
the
doing
road.
a drug. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, same. Well, it just reveals the nonsense of
Got frozen there for a second.
regulate vehicle safety. And in the United States, 40,000 people die on U.S. roads every year. And that's insane. It's because the government doesn't have the same incentive for safety and just preservation of value of vehicles that a market or community-based mechanism would, in tying to insurance and wanting to minimize damage or wanting to minimize death. And the way that they do field sobriety tests is really telling here, because they don't do them often enough. And it's a weird thing for me to say that as a libertarian, but so let me explain. What I mean is that they do chemical tests, they do drug tests, they do alcohol tests that make you, they say blood, breath, or urine. Do you want to, and if you have an blood alcohol content over 0.08 in most places, you get a DUI, driving under the influence, and it is a nasty ticket. It will mess up your life in a lot of places in the U.S. And in some ways, I hate to say it should, if you're really being reckless. But the thing is, it shouldn't be based on your body chemistry. It should be based on your ability to drive safely. They should not be doing chemistry tests on your body. They should be able to do a sobriety test that will determine if you're safe to drive or not, whether you're unsafe from pills, from prescription pills that you mistook, or just whatever, or from alcohol, or from cannabis, or from any other drugs, or from sleep deprivation. You should be just as liable if you get behind the wheel of a car where you are so tired that you're falling asleep at the wheel. You are just as likely to kill someone as if you're a little bit high or drunk or whatever. There are people who are great drivers at 0.02 or whatever it is, instead of 0.08, 0.2%, whatever. Like what would be really, like, for me, I don't drink regularly. I'll get tipsy a few times a month. I'll drink wine with a meal here and there, stuff like that, right? Have a couple of beers, if I'm doing construction work, that sort of thing. But like, I don't have a tolerance. I know, like, and for some people, you have a 0.04 and you're dangerous. And this is just why the system is so insane. You could be one of those people who is dangerous to drive at 0.04, get pulled over for swerving, and you blow into the cop's alcohol testing device, and you blow a 0.04, and the officer says, "Well, I guess you must be sober enough to drive. Please get home safe." And you kill someone on the way home because that's how messed up you are at 0.04. the government doesn't care about your safety. Why did they go with such an obviously less effective mechanism of looking out for your safety? It's because they don't care. They care more about power, profits, paying off special interests,
Yeah.
obviously.
When it comes right down to it, like, I've had friends and family pulled over drink driving in the past and stuff like that, and it's usually a few meters from their house, and that's what they've always really complained about. Like, my brother was literally 2 houses down from where he lived when the cops pulled him over, and like he even tried to plead with them, but I'm right there, man, like right there, and they're like, sorry. But when they busted him, they put a thing on his car where he had to blow into it every morning.
Yeah, and it makes it less safe. And then it interrupts you while you're driving, right?
Exactly.
The interlock, same thing as in the U.S.
Yeah. And,
yes.
The
oh
problem
my
is
gosh.
he had a form of mouthwash that he'd use in the morning, and then like
and that set it off and locked it up, and he couldn't mess it. Yeah,
couldn't get to work, or couldn't do this, or couldn't do that. You know what I mean? And he's like, I don't know what it is, like, because it only would work 50% of the time. Like sometimes it would kick in, sometimes it wouldn't. So he wasn't quite sure. And at his place, and I don't know, for some reason, I'm like, well, what sort of toothbrush? What do you use? What's your morning routine? And he's like, oh, fucking brush my teeth, use this mouthwash, And I was like, let's look at that mouthwash.
Oh, no kidding.
I had a look at the mouthwash, and I was like, dude, like, this is probably it. Stop using this. And he's like, but my breath will stink. I'm like, get some gum, man. Like, you know what I mean? Like, or something else, But when it comes right down to it, like, yeah, I understand that there's a reckless thing when it comes to drink driving and stuff. But as you said, like, it depends on fucking body mass, on how much a person can consume. Like me, like, I could. Like, I remember, like, I drink with some mates and stuff like that, and they're all like, one would fall asleep in the backyard, and I'm like, what are you doing, bro? And, he's just like, can't do it anymore. But he's only a small dude, you know what I mean? Like 5 foot something, you know what I mean? I'm not very tall, but I'm a plump kind of guy, so I can sort of drink a little bit more than he can, and still sort of be a little clear-headed. But yeah, it baffles my mind sometimes, like some of the fucking implementations they put on things in order to help us, or it's for your safety.
By the illusion, under the illusion.
Yeah, like
of helping.
My old man was watching.
You know better.
My dad was watching this doco not too long ago, and it was all about a foiled terror plot back in the, I think it was early 2000s down in Australia, where they wanted to blow up something, it was very vague on what they wanted to do. So in saying that, I only watched the end of it. But at the very end, that they had the constable of police get up there, and he's like, "Oh, but we're implementing these new laws for everybody's safety now." You know what I mean? Because Australia has changed. It's no longer the same country that it was prior to this attack. And I'm just like, you got a couple of fucking idiots who are doing something stupid, man. You don't have to fucking penalize every single fucking person for a couple of fucking radical fucking people. You know what I mean? Like, you didn't need to change the laws to catch these blokes. I don't think you need to change the laws to fucking catch anybody else who's going to do something stupid. What are your thoughts on stuff like that? Like, obviously America's a lot fucking different since fucking 2001. So, and you've seen it firsthand. So
yeah, that was a major departure with 9/11, 2001, of course. And one of the underreported stories about that is how the Libertarian Party was on the rise before that happened.
Okay.
And it was a major blow to the general growth of the Libertarian Party because of we got to rally around the leader effect.
Yeah.
And if the Libertarians are saying, we shouldn't have government do stuff, we're scared, so let's turn to government.
Yeah.
And it really, like, I was not as active in the movement then as I am now. In 2001. I really wasn't active at all. I was, I think, a registered libertarian, and that was about it. I still joined the Marine Corps and volunteered to go to Iraq. So obviously I didn't get it, but yeah, I mean, typical fear tactics of government. I mean, even today we see like coronavirus. Be very afraid. Be very afraid. Make them remember why they need us. Like that's what you should be thinking. You know that scene from V for Vendetta.
Oh,
that's what you should be thinking anytime you hear this. Yeah, it's the Chancellor. You know, in front of on the big screen in front of his cabinet.
I remember that.
Make them remember why they need us.
Yes. I haven't seen that movie in a while. So
Well, and it's if you can keep that in mind anytime the government or the mainstream media is trying to scare you about anything. I think you got to be able to push that emotional manipulation out of your head, out of your own decision making process. And I think humanity, all in all, I'm very optimistic. You know, we are progressing. We are seeing through this, and if anything, whatever we see as the current evils of government are really relatively minor. And even the worst tragedies, I mean, just look back, I'll back this up with statistics here, but the worst tragedies of governments today in the world are insignificant to those of history. And this is from Professor Steven Pinker at Harvard, who proved academically, irrefutably, we are living in the most peaceful times in human history. Yeah, his book, Better Angels of Our Nature, a couple TED Talks based on this, like The Surprising Decline in Violence. Violence is on the decline very consistently over the course of human history. And violence is the greatest offense to freedom. When we say we want a free world, it means we want a world of universal nonviolence. We want no institutionalized coercion. We want to eliminate individual crime as well, because that's as much an affront to freedom. But yeah, when you see it as government, that's the most of it. You know, you eliminate governments, and I'm not for eliminating, but certainly as we know them today, get them down to the community level where they're voluntary, they're not coercive. End government, at least as we know it today, end government as a coercive, violent entity, and 90% of the violence in the world goes away immediately. The other 90%, the other 10%, 90% of that is directly caused by government. Now, in Australia, you might have slightly different dynamics. This is all obviously sort of round statistics, but very hard to refute because of the obvious truth behind them, that of the remaining violence in the world, 90% of that, at least in the United States, is directly caused by government, primarily by the war on drugs, but also the war on poverty and just what all of government policy that creates poverty and prevents us from dealing with people who are destitute properly. So getting rid of government as a centralized coercive entity right now for humanity means getting rid of 99% of the violence in the world. The rest, we're going to be able to deal with way more effectively when you don't have to call the cops and depend on a government agency to settle disputes and all of that. It's going to be, we're on the verge of, I guess you could call it a great leap forward towards peace and prosperity and harmony and freedom for all of humanity.
I fear that because of social media and the news, people are more, because information is more readily available these days, so that whole fear-mongering thing is easily enough pushed, and people are more alert. The idea of that fear mentality is triggered constantly by seeing bad things on, say, Facebook or the news. That it's easy to sell a bad story than, like, oh, did you hear that poverty's down?
I've written about this. I think that, and Facebook, we know, causes people to be more depressed. I mean, you want to end polarization, get off Facebook. You solve a lot of problems. I say, okay, well, if that's not realistic, let's just get rid of the federal government, and that's way more realistic than getting people off of Facebook. And go, it actually is.
Well, Facebook crashed not that long ago, and fucking, like, it was only down for like an hour, 2 hours, something like that. And I just remember fucking the people, like, my cousin rang me up. He's like, "Is your Facebook working?" I'm like, "I don't know, dude. I'm at work." Like, I don't know if it's fucking
outside of Facebook.
He's like, it's working for me anyway.
I'm a big fan of technology and the internet and information flowing faster and freely, being a force for good for the world. The generation of a kind of hive mind, of a global conversation, of being able to tap all the wealth of human knowledge that's available on the internet, of being able to come together in more collective, voluntary, collective decision-making processes that are collaborative and open source on the internet. I think we can look at the effect of Facebook and the social media bubble effect of people getting feeds of information that reinforce their worldview as being dangerous. We can look at the ways that Facebook degrades the conversation and encourages bad faith engagement in the general human conversation. But overall, I mean, even me, like as an independent activist, most of the events I've done have been Facebook events. You know, I've been able to connect with so many people, even YouTube, where I am super shadow banned right now.
Really?
I mean, I got 250,000 subscribers and I get less than 1,000 views per video.
Okay.
Like, I mean, it's just look at the numbers sometimes.
Okay.
I still think even with that, the internet is still a critical force for good and human progress. So, Chris, I got to go. We got to get back on the road here. I appreciate your time and the opportunity tonight. And if anybody wants to help, if you know, of course, people in Australia, you cannot donate to our political campaign. You're welcome to support my media operations through Adam versus the Man. And but everything, my book is free in every digital format possible. You can find that and every other way to get a hold of me at thefreedomline.com. So thanks again, Chris, and best of luck building your new production.
Thank you very much, Adam. And again, you've been watching Political Night. This is Adam Kokesh, and you're welcome on the show as many times as you want, sir. I think this is our third conversation, so yeah. Hopefully this has come many, many more. Have a good one, mate.
Peace and love, y'all.
Thank you. Bye.